Three-time Big Ten champ, 17 years, 3 national championships. You know, he got a couple of them at Florida with the Gators, one with the Buckeyes. He's now a Fox Sports lead sports analyst. Urban Meyer is now joining us in the herd. Big noon kickoff at Columbus. So the 12-team playoff, Urban, I watched Georgia and Texas, and I thought, you know, if you're going to lose to Georgia, you might as well get your butt kicked so you can show the tape in 3 months when you have to play them again. You know, you wouldn't want to outplay them and lose. And I tried to take some value from getting your butt kicked because the world's new now. If you got beat that badly and had to play Georgia again, could you not argue it's the right way to lose? Just get stomped.
Well, it's hard to even fathom getting stomped. I know it's happened a few times, but I'll tell you what, Colin, I do agree with that. But I have Georgia number 1. That was by far the best performance I've seen until 2024. I mean, they are the best team in the country. If they play like that, they are the best team in the country.
Yeah. Texas, here's what worries me about Texas. And I felt this a little about USC and Miami. I think Ohio State's a great program. Penn State's a great program. Georgia's a great program. Texas, though, USC, sometimes Urban, they're glamour programs. And I thought the way they lost, I'm like, that's what I was afraid of. They start getting into their fields, the Lamborghinis. Buckeyes, I've never felt the Buckeyes are glamour. It's Ohio. It's physicality. You're laughing at me, but the way Texas lost, I'm like, that was my biggest fear. The pretty boys down in Austin. Was it not?
Yeah, that's kind of had that history, but there's also, I always look at jobs and I see Texas, and you mentioned USC. That doesn't comprehend with me. Those are 2 of the top 3, 4, 5 because you stumble over great players. And the state of Texas, high school football is tough. So I get it. I've heard that before. I'll be honest, I don't buy it. That can't happen in Texas because the culture there in high school, it starts in high school football. You better be a tough dude to go play high school football in Texas.
Yeah.
So I expect Texas to rebound. I really do. I mean, the good thing is, Colin, Sark has raised the level of expectation that can't happen. And it did happen, so they got a rebound.
So you and Bill Parcells are cleanup specialists. You go in, you clean up the roster, you clean up the details, and you win immediately. You did it at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, Ohio State. So, listen, replacing Nick Saban is no fun. Replacing Urban, Nick Saban, it's no fun to replace you guys. But I have heard stories, and people are saying Alabama's a little loose. It's a little loose. And I think, well, let's ask somebody who's done this. You didn't replace a lot of legends. It is harder doing that. But are some of the criticisms of Kalen DeBoer, you know, the players are kicking things, and is it a fair criticism? It's a tad loose right now at Bama.
Well, I was always one after. So I was one after Spurrier. I was one after Tressel. So those are 2 legends. And the one thing about Spurrier, I always felt Steve Spurrier. Everywhere, I mean, every day I used to call it the shadow of the visor. So I could have played a tape for you in August and said at some point Alabama's coaching staff is going to get criticized because he's not Nick Saban. They don't look like Nick Saban's team. It's an automatic. And they won. They beat Georgia, so everybody went away. But then a minute they lose a game, and they had 2 bad losses. So you're going to hear that, and he's got to deal with it. He knew that. I promise you, he knew that before he took that job.
Yeah. Is it possible that Bama's just not as good this year? And listen, some teams, you know it, you can figure it out. I would argue when I've watched them play, they don't look as good as Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, or Oregon. I don't think they're as good. Is that fair?
No, it's absolutely fair. You had a un-Alabama-like roster transition when the coaching change was made. It's going to take a second. You know what? I think the false expectations, and I actually bought into it with Jalen Milroe, and when they beat Georgia like that, they that first half of football, they looked like the best team in the country. They're not. But it's not panic time. He's got to build his roster. It's real. That's not as good as Alabama team as they will be, I think, at the end of this year and next year.
So Ohio State passes the eye test. They become wide receiver U. I think they've got their running game solved. I was a little discouraged with the defense at Oregon, but I also think, listen, Autzen Stadium's a nightmare. You get off your game. If you're going to get beat, Autzen Stadium's the place to get beat. But it is a little unnerving when Dylan Gabriel just tears you apart. Is there anything structurally or schematically you saw with Ohio State that they need to clean up?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow as well. So whenever we played a somewhat softer schedule, I was paranoid and a panic because your problems don't show up until you play a great team. In Ohio State's schedule, it wasn't no one's fault. They just had a soft non-conference schedule. And sure enough, the pass defense showed up. I see two situations with the pass defense. Whenever you say pass defense, the first, sure, the corner's got to play better, but you have to talk about the pass rush. You have two future NFL players at defensive end with JT and Jack Sawyer. They had 0 sacks. And they played too many plays. They played 60 plays, almost double what they played in the first 5 games average. And then the interior D-line wasn't working with the defensive ends, and Dylan Gabriel had a very comfortable pocket, and he ripped them apart. You can't play pass defense without hitting the quarterback. So I know Coach Day's been spending time with the defense. I anticipate a big change, not necessarily big changes, a lot of changes on the pass rush from Ohio State.
So years ago, you and I were talking about USC. This was pre-Lincoln Riley, and you said they just don't have enough good players, especially on the defensive line. Well, all these years later with Lincoln, they still don't have a great defensive line. Now, they're super young on offense. They got a senior running back and a senior center. They return everybody. Some of this is Michigan's defensive line, a bunch of freshmen up front for USC. But I look at them, and I see them losing Maryland, Minnesota, and Urban. I don't see enough elite guys. They have not put a fence around Southern California. Is that a legitimate criticism?
It is. And what's alarming to me is, Colin, I don't feel the panic that the country should be in. USC should not be losing. Once again, I think they got an excellent coach. They don't have enough firepower in the offensive and defensive lines. I told you that after we played them in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
6 years ago or something. When I watched the whole body work, elite skill, elite quarterback, skill on both sides, but I'm watching the offensive and defensive lines. And until they get that fixed, I don't think they're going to be able to compete at the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They have to get that fixed.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question when you watch Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Oregon, they just look different. Finally, I want to go back to the Texas-Georgia thing is interesting. So, they pull Quinn Ewers and they put in Arch Manning, and you dealt with all these quarterbacks. Quinn wasn't playing particularly well, and a lot of people said afterwards, well, he's kind of panicking. Well, I mean, you're in a big game. You're seeing maybe Quinn's not seeing the field. Give me what a coach thinks. It's not just the score to pull a quarterback. And we both know Sark knows quarterbacks. He's excellent. What was your take when a quarterback is struggling, and not many of yours did? But what would be your take on, hey, this just isn't the Saturday?
I would always have a meeting early in the season to make it perfectly clear that the expectation is you play the very best at your position. If not, the guy behind is going to get a shot. First of all, that keeps your backup fully engaged, but it also, you're going to, at some point, you're going to have to make a change at different positions. If you're fortunate, you don't have to a quarterback, but he did the right thing. And I think the outer world, the outside Austin world, or the outside the Longhorn locker room, I think everybody expected that. If you're not playing well, you got a good player behind him, play him. So I don't see the same panic. I've heard this a bunch this past week. Did he do the right thing? First of all, he's a coach. He did the right thing. That's his call, and he's a quarterback, really good quarterback coach. Second of all, I imagine he's handled that well before this situation happened. He's talked to the team. The team would probably have been more shocked if he didn't make that change, because when someone's not playing well, give the other guy a shot.
Finally, I got to be honest. Deion Sanders, I thought, was going to make Colorado interesting. I didn't doubt that. But the whole transfer portal thing, I got, man, that's hard way to – I would build through high school and occasionally add a transfer. But the transfer portal, if you're getting the guy from Ohio State or Georgia, there's probably a reason. Buckeyes, and they're not letting guys go if they like him. But I will be honest with you. I watched Deion's run game and defensive line the last couple of weeks, and they look kind of legitimate. They run the ball. Warren Sapp's done a good job. Are you surprised? I mean, really, are you kind of surprised how well they're playing?
am, but I'm not, because remember last year we had them the first 3 games. So I went out on my own time and I watched them during training camp because Deion's a friend. I've always really got along well with Deion. And I sat in meetings. He allowed me full access to his program. And I called my guys at Big New and I said, no, I don't know if it's this year or next year, whatever it is. They have 2 elite players. But beyond all the rings and watches and give me my theme music, there is a lot of substance in that program. I tell people that all the time. I sat and listened, and he's hard on those players. The coaches push those players. So I'm not that surprised. I know if he continues to, the transfer portal thing is unnerving. I mean, that's a lot of transition every year.
Yeah.
But as far as substance in a program, Colin, I'm telling you, there's a lot of substance in Colorado's program.
All right, he's in Columbus, where he was 83 and 9. And I bet you he remembers every loss and the losses. The wins all fade, but I guarantee you remember the halftime score of every loss. You only had 9, but you coaches forget the wins. You remember, if I said right now, name the 9, you'd fly right through them, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, I know the 9. As a matter of fact, on the way home in the car today, I'm going to go through them again. How the hell did that happen?
Urban Meyer, noon kickoff. Great seeing you, Coach.
Thanks, Colin. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.